All right, so good morning, students. Today we are, thank you, I appreciate you for typing in the chat. We're going to talk about the bandsaw, how it operates, and basically just some basic safety procedures and all that kind of good stuff. So we actually have a jet bandsaw. I'm actually going to unplug it real quick. So anytime that you're working on a machine, and this isn't just for the shop or anything, you know, I unplugged it, so there's no power going to it. So even if I do push the start button or the stop button or stop button, it's not going to turn on. So it's smart and it's safe. All right, so I'm going to open this up so you can actually see this. So how the bandsaw works. Now you guys will never have to do this. I'll do it when I change the blade and everything. There's a motor down here. All right, and this is the drive wheel. So what it does is this spins and it causes the top wheel to spin as well, and it's actually a steel band. Now I'm going to lift this guard up so you can actually see the blade, and I'll move it closer in a better position so you guys can see this a little better. All right, so you can actually see the blade right here. So this is the blade. Now normally if it's plugged in or anything, I'm never going to do this, but since it's unplugged in that, you know, you can see that this is a steel band. It's flexible. It'll bend, it'll twist and everything, and it only bends so far. So there's a couple different things you have to understand about the bandsaw. If you're trying to get a straight rip cut or a cross cut, I mean, you're either going to use the sliding compound miter saw, or you're going to use the table saw. But if you're making a curve cut and say you want to put a design in a piece of wood, or maybe you're building a rocking chair and you want to cut a rocker ply, you'd either use the bandsaw or you'd use the scroll saw. Because of that flexible blade, it only cuts in one direction and spins down, all right? And there's actually teeth on this, and it only cuts one way, all right? So anytime that you use the bandsaw, like when you come up to it and you're about to use it, this blade guard should be all the way down, all right? So basically what the blade guard does is it protects you from cutting your fingers or getting injured or hurt or anything. Guards are there to protect you. Anytime that you're cutting a piece, which I'll actually grab a small piece of wood right here. The rule of thumb is you raise up the guard before it's even turned on, all right? You lower the guard, and you actually want to get down somewhat to eye level, and you're going to put it up just about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch above the workpiece. So the workpiece is whatever material that you're cutting. Now, some bandsaws cut metal. A lot of them cut wood. Some actually have blades on it where you can cut metal or wood. Now, since this is primarily a wood shop, I only order blades that cut through wood. So you can't cut metal in here. Now, in Mr. Thompson's class, yes, you do have a bandsaw over there that will cut metal, but it's specifically designed to cut metal. This is only for wood. So I already have my workpiece adjusted, and when I'm cutting this, there's a couple different ways that you can do this, or I say a couple different methods. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and shut these. All right, when you're cutting this, and I'm going to do this kind of backwards so you guys can see this. All right, you can do on either side of the blade, cut, push all the way through. When you get to the back side of the cut, like all the way back here, there's no splitter or anything like there was on the table saw, so this wood is going to want to come together. So if you push too hard, what's going to happen is your hands are going to come together, all right, or you can pinch the blade. So when you get to the end, you slow down and allow it to cut. So you can't force feed this or push too hard. It only spins so hard or spins so fast, and it only cuts so fast. So if you push too hard, you can push the blade actually off the track while it's spinning. You know, when something in motion, all of a sudden you try to stop it, something's going to bend, or it's going to break, or it's going to snap. So you want to make sure that you're careful with this. Now, this right here, this little piece, is called the throat plate. All right. I will say this, when you're using the shop vac, please do not try to suck up the throat plate. It'll bend it, it'll break it, and then I'll have to rebend it and put it back, but usually I'll just put a new one in there. I only have a couple of them, or a couple spare ones. But basically what the throat plate, what this prevents is from tiny little pieces to get pinched in between the blade in the throat plate, so nothing gets pinched or it doesn't go on the wheel and then pull the blade guard off or anything. So normally you want your fingers 2 to 4 inches away from either side of the blade. Anything, if your fingers are inside this throat plate and then you're entering the danger zone, you could accidentally cut your finger and injure yourself. But 2 to 4 inches on either side of the blade. So this is about 2 inches, this is about 4 inches. All right, and when you're actually cutting with this, like I said, you can do either side of the blade, or you can go on one side of the blade like this. When you're cutting, all right, you do not want to put any body, extremity, anything in front of the path of a moving object or in front of the blade. So if your thumb and you're cutting like this, all right, that's a no-no because it's in the path of the blade. If your arms, when you're cutting it and you're cutting this and your arm is in the path of the blade, that's a no-no, all right? So if it's in the path of the blade and you're cutting, chances are you're gonna cut that object. So you don't want anything in the path of the blade. Also, when you're cutting, you know, obviously you don't want to cut all the way out here because this has leverage and you don't have that much control over it. So you want to get nice and close, tight. You're pushing down and you're pushing forward. Now on this, yes, you can make curved cuts and make cool, intricate designs, but the main safety issue that you need to be aware of is you always need to make sure that you're pressing down. So if for some reason it binds or breaks or anything along that line, you want it down against here. You don't want it wobbling like this when you're cutting. All right, so I'm going to turn on the dust collection system, and I'm going to change the angle so you guys can see this. I'll plug the machine back in, turn on the dust collection, and then I'll actually make a couple different cuts. So I'm going to go ahead and mute my mic on the computer because it's going to be really loud when I turn on the dust collection. So make sure I have my safety glasses on. I'm going to plug in my machine back in over here. And I'll actually make a couple different cuts. So the first cut, I'll cut it in half, hands either side of the blade. I'll do hand over hand, cut off an edge, and I'll actually get a piece of plywood and I'll do a curved cut. So I'm gonna go ahead and mute myself and go turn on the dust collection system. Also, for those watching on the cell phone and everything, you see I have a different piece of wood, so I have to readjust it, make sure everything's nice, neat, guard properly adjusted. The first cut I'm going to make, I'm going to do either side of the blade. So I'll turn this a little bit, so the video on my phone, you guys can see this. And I'm actually going to back up my cart because when I cut this, I want to make sure that nothing's behind it or in the way. So hold my workpiece, nothing on the table when we started. So I start, wait for it to get up to speed. Either side of the blade, watching what I'm cutting. Slow down when you get to the end. You make a cut. Now this is a scrap piece, so I'm going to set this off to the side. Alright, then the next cut that I'm going to make is I'm just going to cut off with a small little edge like this. So if I make a line, alright, like this, I'm going to cut off an edge. I'm going to put this in my pocket because I don't want anything messing up. So I stand off the side. Notice that my arm is parallel with the blade instead of being in the path. So making sure I pressure here, push it down and in. Just cut slow, it only cuts so fast. I slow down when I get to the end. Now, a lot of you, what you want to do is you want to grab this piece. That's a no-no. Shut it off, wait for all motion to stop, and a lot of you are going to want to use your fingers. You don't want to do that, or have your fingers close to the blade, because it's actually in between the throat plate and the blade, and I don't want my fingers there. I don't want to use my hands to dust it off, so I wait for all motion to stop. I take my piece, and I push it out of the back, I grab it, and then I can throw it away, or move it to another section. So I'm going to grab my pin again, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to draw a curve on here, and I'm going to make this curve cut. One thing you'll notice is I'll have pressure on either side of the blade. So now what I'll do, so I'm going to cut through here and make my curve cut. So once again, I turn on the machine, start making my cut. You notice my hands are on either side of the blade. So I start here, get my starting cut, and I just cut slow. Allow the blade to cut. Notice my fingers are never, ever in the path of this blade. Never, ever in the path of the blade when I'm cutting, so that's important. So make my cut, slow down when I get to the end, shut it off, and once again you want to make sure all motion has stopped before you do anything else. And yes, I know that I'm talking, but look at my eyes. What am I paying attention to? I'm looking at that blade. It is still moving. I'm still responsible. So now that it's shut off, I loosen the blade guard, put it back down, so that way, no one, if someone comes up and it's still turned on, then you're still safe.